Now, keep in mind, at this point, let's put the cross table back up. At this point, Bobby has, going into the last round, Bobby has 9.5 points. If he wins this game, he will have 10.5 points, which, as you can see, would have ended up in a three-way tie for first place. And it had to be a bit of a heartbreaking draw because as I was going through this game, it was clear that Black had a should have been decisive advantage that he let slip into a draw. Likewise, Ivkov had 9.5 points. So both Ivkov and Fischer had strong motivation to play for a win. Last round game. It doesn't get any more exciting than this. If either player wins, that player, the winning player, gets first place with Najdorf and Pachman. Neither player won, and so they had to share third place. Let's see how the game unfolded, but first, let me tell you a little bit about Borislav Ivkov. He was born in Belgrade, which was then part of Yugoslavia. You see the Serbian flag there now, but Yugoslavia at the time. Born November 12th, 1933. He only died a couple of years ago, February 14th, 2022. He was 88. He was a national master in 1949, an international master in 1954, and a grand master in 1955. He won the Yugoslav Chess Championship in 1958, 63, and 72. Long-time second place behind Svetozar Gligoric, but he did manage a few national titles. He also had quite a few tournament wins, including Mar del Plata 1955, Buenos Aires 1955, which was also the year he got the GM title, Sarajevo 1958, Belgrade 59, Lima, Peru 1959, Santiago 1959, Beverwijk 1961, Zagreb 1965, Sarajevo 1967, Malaga 1968, Amsterdam 1974, and the Tigran Petrosian Memorial Tournament in Moscow in 1999. Really, did I type that right? 1999. First place in 1999. That is remarkable. He won the European Senior Chess Championship in 2006. He successfully played at the Canadian Open in 2007 and 2008. He was the first world junior champion in 1951. First year they had that title. He was ranked number 9 in the world. Get this, Borislav Ivkov, ranked 9th in the world in 1956. Strong player was Borislav Ivkov. But we get D4, which means we're going to probably have a King's Indian. Knight F6, C4, and sure enough, G6. Knight C3, Bishop G7, a normal variation, E4, Pawn D6, Pawn F3. This is Samisch's variation in this line. Friedrich Samisch was a German player and theorist. He lived from 1896 to 1975. Samisch was one of the original grandmasters when the title was standardized in 1950. We get E5 here, one of Bobby's favorites. D5, Knight H5, Bishop to E3 right here. This is the normal move. Bot calling for castles, but that is the normal move. That is the normal move. But King's Knight to E2 is unusual. Usually Queen D2 is played here. King's Knight to E2. From Ivkov. Now castles, now Queen D2. A6. It's been quite successful for Black, A6 has. The most frequent move here is Knight D7. Oops, that's a bishop. Knight D7. That gets an inaccuracy. Oh, it changed it to a check mark. F4 might be tempting. I'm sure it's been played. That also is inaccurate. Oh, that also gets changed to a check mark. Ficklebot. See what I'm saying about Ficklebot and its inaccuracies? It can't make up its mind. That pushes the bishop back to F2. And then you can really emphasize this bishop's lack of utility by playing B6. When you have a lack of utility, you get an F in utility. And when you put an F in utility, it's futility. They cracked me up. Let's go back. A6 from Bobby Fischer. Queenside castles. White can play pawn takes pawn first here, if I'm not mistaken. And after pawn takes pawn, let's see what we get. Oh, that says it's inaccurate. I feel like you can play it, though. And then castle queenside. Well, he queenside castled right away. B5. I still like the idea of F4. See what I get for F4 here. Still inaccurate. It still pushes the bishop back, and the same comment as before. Anyway, B5. Now E takes F5. C takes B5 has been played a touch more frequently. And as you can see, that's considered a mistake. Well, we're going to take that. And the point is, if you take this, I'm taking the A-man with my rook. Let's go back. Am I not right? Let me go to the database. C5 has also been played more frequently. Didn't realize that. I wasn't familiar with this C5 line. The bot doesn't like that either. The bot likes what Ivkov played. But what Ivkov played has not been played very frequently. And I think one of the problems with a good move played in a losing game is that nobody else wants to try it in the future. So they try other things like C5 and C takes B5. But if it lost to Bobby Fischer, don't rule it out. Doesn't mean it's a bad choice. All right, so G takes F5 here. Knight G3. Well, that also gets inaccurate, but if you look at the eval bar, it's dead center, and really it feels like white is a touch better. Knight F6 is played. Bishop G5, pinning the knight. Don't take this pawn here. Do not play C takes B5 because of this fork right here, and you're going to lose your knight. Bishop G5 is the right way to go. Queen to E8 gets out of the pin, and that's questioned by the bot. B4 is a smidge more popular in the database. Slightly more frequently played is B4. But breaking this pin makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Now H4 is played. That gets the big red X. Well, now you can take this pawn. You couldn't take it with the bishop up here, but now you can. That is back on the table. You can always play H4 later. If Queen G6 is played, I don't know if that actually works. No, it doesn't. Let's go back. H4 played here. You can play pawn takes pawn. B4 hits the knight. Knight B1, undeveloping the knight. Knight H5. Also questioned. It is the most frequently played move. Although I would be very tempted to simply play A5 here and kind of solidify things on the queen's side. Knight H5. What did I get on that pawn move? A star. Good. Knight H5. Knight takes knight. Queen takes knight. Now Bishop E2. Why not take the pawn? Since I didn't play A5, why not take the pawn? Not sure. Bishop E2 gets an X and it says take the pawn. Take the pawn. And Queen A5 is a strong threat here. So we'd have to play A5 ourselves to keep the queen from going there. What? Inaccurate. I thought just kick that queen out of there. Anyway, Bishop E2 saying you can keep your pawn. F4, isolating this bishop. Yeah, I mean, just hit the bishop, right? What's the bot recommending? Oh, the bot's still saying A5. But can I just hit the bishop? Yeah, I get a star there. Bobby wanting to isolate and trap the bishop. That's the point. He's threatening to trap the bishop. So now it's too late to take this pawn because the bishop would be trapped, right? He did not play this, and he should not play queen takes pawn because your bishop is trapped. Well, you might think you could come to E7, but you can't. So G4 hits our queen. Queen F7. Now Bishop D3. Pawn H6. Apparently it's time to play A5 at last. Queen C2. Interesting. Yeah, he's willing to give up the bishop to get this attack. So I guess there's no need. You're losing your bishop anyway. So you might think, well, why not Desperado? I get a star. But white's looking pretty good here because G5 comes and man, this is not looking good. This is not looking good for black. So I may have been mistaken. I thought black was winning this game. Or maybe he comes back and gets the advantage later. So white had a huge advantage. Well, I don't know about huge, but a significant advantage. And I think black does get a huge advantage. We'll see as the game progresses. I'd play H5 here. Oof, deadly. Queen C2 was played by Borislav, Ivkov, and B3. Yeah, A5 exercises the better part of valor. We've been calling for this quite a few times. And yeah, come back to the idea of taking the bishop. Not a good idea at all. First of all, bishop H7 gets an exclam, forces the king to H8, and then pawn takes pawn, and this game is over. This game is over. You're being mated. I'm going to come here and then mate you here. Let's do a nothing move. Check. Oh, double exclam. And mate's coming. You can't take, or it's an immediate mate. You have to block. You have to give your queen away. But that doesn't stop mate. It just delays the inevitable. Oh, but it does give you a runaway square. So I guess I'd have to cut that off. Anyway, come back. You can't take the bishop is my point. So he tried B3, gets the big red X. A takes B3. A5. Now he plays A5. Queen E2, question mark. Bot calling for bishop G6. Thought C5 might be interesting here. And it also might be erroneous. Anyway, Queen E2. And now that this battery is not in place, now it should be safe to take because now it's not safe to give check. And he does. I'm curious why that gets a big red X. I feel like that's safe. There's no battery here anymore. This is given a big red X, but he should certainly be fine with this capture since the queen is no longer backing up the bishop and we need not fear bishop H7. So H takes G5 now renews the hope of bishop H7, and that would be catastrophic if we allow it. But rook D8 is played. And I personally preferred rook E8. I like rook E8 because it not only supports the E-man with the idea of an eventual push, but it's glaring menacingly at the queen. Furthermore, it gives the king a little breathing room in either case. By the way, queen E7 should work as well. That gives the king the same kind of breathing room, although I'm told that's inaccurate. Oh, look! Hey, this is an example of what I was saying earlier in the program. We said rook d8 gets a big red X and rook e8 should be played. But now look, when I suggest queen e7, it says, no, you should have played Bobby's move. That is what I mean by fickle bot, and that's what I mean when I say ignore these inaccuracies. Well, maybe don't ignore them, but don't take them too seriously. Fickle bot can't make up his mind. Now that I'm recommending queen e7, it's saying rook d8 is the best move. But when Bobby played rook d8, it's saying no, rook e8 is the best move, and rook d8 is a big miss. Rook d8 is a perfectly good move, even though the bot here gives it a big red X. Here it says, no, that is the best move you can play. So he can't make up his mind. All right, rook d8 is played. G6 hits the queen. Here, knight C3 was my choice. You want to get this knight back into the game, and it keeps an eye here on this square. It potentially can access the E4 square, so very versatile move. I get a star for that move. G6 hits my queen. Queen E7. Now knight C3. So I don't know why that's given an inaccuracy. It makes perfect sense. By the way, I want to show you here one idea White could have if he wanted to draw. Remember, both players are playing for a win in this last round game because they're both in striking range of first place. When you look at this, you see that both players are at 9.5 points, and if either player wins, they will have 10.5 points. which they didn't know at the time, but it would be sufficient for first place. So they're both playing for a win. But if all white needed was a draw here, he could play queen h2. Now, it's marked with a question mark, but let me make my case. This really has the idea of forcing a repetition. So, for example, let's say knight to d7 here, very normal move, and it does get a star. I'm going to play check, force the king to f8, and now I'm going to play check again. Double exclam, and this is my second double exclam of the night. And the point is this. He can take my queen, but now I have a repetition and a forced draw right there. King must move to g7. It's his only legal move. The pawn is defended by my bishop, and so h7 is defended by the pawn. There's check, and he dare not come up this way or he's going to lose the game. He must allow the repetition, and that's going to be that. If he tries to avoid the repetition, he will lose the game because I'm going to play g5. Boom! And guess what? There goes your queen. So he has to come back. He cannot come to g8 because obviously I would win the queen there. I don't want to take the queen here because then black obviously gets my rook and then black is up a rook. All right, so my point here is it's a repetition. That's my point. That's all I was getting at back here. Even though that gets a question mark, it's a dead draw. But both players need a win. They're both vying for first place. Now, this gets an inaccuracy, but it's a perfectly reasonable move, as is the move suggested, sure. Here, knight a6. I didn't care for this. The knight on the rim is dim, and frankly, you get more versatility from your knight by playing to d7. That keeps your options open to come over to f6 or to c5, and yeah, both moves are going to be good in their case. Like if he just lifts his rook, I'll play the knight here. But knight a6 was played, knight e4. And again, I think anytime he should be lifting his rook either to h5 or h7, and that gets a star. And of course, the idea is to get that battery on the open file. So for example, knight c5, and we bring our rook to h1. Even, why does that get a question mark? I don't understand. That is the most natural move right there, is to double your rooks on the open file. All right, anyway, knight e4, knight c5, knight takes knight, pawn takes the knight, and now rook h5 comes. And again, rook h7, either or should work just as well, I would think. Let's see what it says. Exclam for that as well. And right here, we would play king f8, or not. Boy. Do not play bishop e4 here. That's going to be answered by rook d6. Oh, yeah. I went from double exclams to a bunch of question marks. All right, let's go back. Pawn takes knight, rook h5. Pawn a4, pawn takes pawn. And again, get those rooks doubled on the open file, right? Keep that attack going. And when we get the triple battery, we're winning the game. Look, the pawn covers here, and that's occupied, right? So takes, and if I have a queen that can take, that's just a checkmate. It's hard to defend. I guess I could, can I a takes b3 here? Or bishop takes g4 is interesting. Bishop takes g4, f takes g4, and then I push. Looks really interesting. This looks interesting with rook a1 coming, and then that busts up the battery. Let's see what it thinks of this. Oh, it liked the bishop takes g4 idea. And the point is now e4. Should have stuck with my first instinct. All right. B takes a4 was played. Rook takes a4. King b1. Rook hd1 still begging to be played here, by the way. King b1. It's going for queen h2, but I would think rook h1 should be fine. Yeah, and I mean, then I'm pretty much compelled to trade rooks. Ooh, an exclam. And yes. And you get this. And black has an advantage. King B1 was played, bishop D7, pawn D6, and did I mention that rook to H1 has got to be played? Instead, pawn D6, there's the arrow. The eval bar has shifted in black's favor substantially. Pawn takes pawn, bishop E4. You might have could have played bishop E4 here. Let's see. Yeah, get a star. But, I mean, rook here's got to be played. It's just the most normal and natural move. D6 was played. Pawn takes the pawn. Bishop E4 now. Kind of ironic because now it gets a inaccuracy. And this is probably the last chance he had to double his rooks. Bishop E6. Rook B8 is coming. Queen D3 here. Queen A7. Now, do not play this move. That's a blunder because Checosaurus Rex, and then you're losing a bishop. Well, if you play here, and then I take with my queen check, you have to move your king, and now rook F5 check, king E8, and boom, queen is trapped. Let's go back. Queen A7 was played. Rook DH1 comes way, way, way too late. By the way, okay, bishop C6 is called for. Bishop D5, by the way, is going to be answered by rook A1 check. That also gets a star, but again, it's too little too late. Rook A1 check, king C2, queen A4 check, and then he probably blocks with queen B3, but then his king becomes overworked. Yeah, that's just not going to work. He blocks, I check, he takes, I take the bishop. Oh, maybe that is his best try. Maybe I should rook B8 here. I was thinking of takes. Oh! Double exclam. Number, what is that, 3 or 4? Double exclam. Double exclam. And my point is, boom, 2 bishops against 1 rook. That is my point. And look at these pawns. Oof, monsters. Monsters. So, I almost backed out. I almost gave rook b8 check. Let's see what it says about that. It gets a thumbs up. All right, let's go back. We had rook dh1 here. Now rook a1 check is played. Yeah, rook b8 first might be even stronger. Play this first. Well, he could play king c2, though. King c2. But if he does, I've got rook takes c4 check. Oh, that's very strong. That's going to win. Look, the eval bar is maxed out. So, I mean, after king b1, I'm going to play here. Or even king d1, I'm going to play here. Oops, sorry. King d1, I'm still going to play there. Wow, take the rook, says the bot. Well, there must be something better than rook d4. There's probably a faster mate than rook d4. Take the rook must mean that there's a faster mate, because I'm taking here. Anyway, rook b8, definitely stronger than rook a1. Look at that eval bar, though. He's clearly winning, but time is running out. I can't believe he didn't win this game. This is Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer never makes mistakes. So king c2, queen a4 check is played. Queen b3, queen takes queen check is played. King takes the queen. And now rook b8 check is played. King c3. And rook a2, he decides to super attack the b-man. Rook b1, very strange looking move. Rook b4, pawn b3 defense. Rook a3, now king c2. Rook a2 check, king c3. And right here, Bobby misses the golden opportunity. He played rook e2. Big question mark, and the eval bar plummets. What an unfortunate miss. Do you see the tactic available here? Notice the piece relationship between our rook and his. We take this pawn. The b-man is pinned. You say, no. The bishop defends the rook. Double exclam. Was that number 5 or number 4 of the night? So let's talk about this. On pawn takes the bishop. Rook takes the rook. Now, why not bishop takes the rook? Well, you can, right? But discovered check coming. Boom. King B3, and bada bing, bada boom. Defended by that magnificent bishop that's been the star of the entire game. And I'm getting that bishop, whichever way you go. You've got 2 squares to go to. Either way, I'm winning that bishop. So, rook E2, the unthinkable. So white was winning, then black was winning, and here we are. The eval bar dead equal. He comes in here, rook A1, rook E3 check, king C2. King D2 is better to prevent the rook from coming back to E2, but that would allow me to capture and get a battery defense going back here. King C2, and he went ahead and captured the pawn anyway, which gets a big red X, but I don't know why. The eval bar's dead center either way, but yeah, rook B8 is an interesting move. He might rook H7 here, A7. Well, you could rook H7 too, for that matter. Either way, they both get a star. But rook takes rook. By the way, don't take with the wrong rook. That would be just not the best way to go. And on rook A8, bishop F8, you get G7 now. And after king takes, there's your check. The bishop has no good move there. If you bishop F7, rook H7, suddenly this bishop becomes the star. So that can't be good. Make sure you take with the right rook. And he did. Rook A8 check. Rook B8. Rook A7 anyway. Rook B2 check. King C1. Rook 2B4. Now rook H7. Bishop F6. Don't play. Hey, there's a free pawn. That would be horrific. Game over. Game over. So bishop F6, G7 is played, rook takes C4 check, king D1, rook D4 check, king C1, and they repeated, and the game was drawn. So both players had and lost chances. Unfortunate. Both missed their golden opportunity to share first place and instead shared third place. So a case of, I don't want it, you take it. Unfortunate. Not the most pristine game in the history of chess. Not the best tournament for Bobby. Started out really bad. He finished strong. 7 out of the 8 of his last games were wins, and this was a draw.